Exactly 2 years ago, we acquired this abandoned farmstead in the forest. Having no experience in construction, we decided to experiment and create something unusual and interesting. And today, we have this picture. But let's start from the beginning. This story began early in the spring. As soon as the weather allowed us to be more or less comfortable outside, the first thing we did was clean up. We prepared the workspace, threw away accumulated trash and artifacts from the past, and gradually started removing the soil, trying to achieve the necessary level. Shovel by shovel, cart by cart.
And the main task of the blind area is to divert water away from the house. For this, the entire base must be angled. And we made this kind of device. We will have an output of 3 centimeters over 1.5 meters. No need to bother catching this bubble at an angle, since we have already tilted it at an angle by default with the presence of an angle. The level shows that it should be even. In reality, we have the slope angle that we need.
Yes, in fact, we have spoiled the main function of the level, and now it shows a perfect horizon at the required slope. This life hack greatly simplifies life, and as you can see, the work is in full swing. The site is leveling right before our eyes. Simultaneously, we are dismantling all unnecessary elements from the facade, as it will soon have a completely new look. But let's take it step by step. And so, the next day we reached the back side of the house.
On this side of the house, the situation is a bit more challenging. Work more, because there are a lot of roots here, very close to the house, and we really don't want to somehow damage them so that these trees don't fall on our house later. We'll probably start from the terrace. We'll take the terrace level as 0, and let's start leveling. There's definitely a lot more work here than on the other side, but there's nothing to be done. We have to deal with this too.
That's right, this also needs to be addressed. In the end, Sasha drafted a work plan, listened carefully, and started implementing it. Gold Animaster. There's really a lot of junk accumulated here. I think it's a normal practice in such village houses. Behind the house, there often pile up seemingly very useful things that are too good to throw away. Over time they accumulate more and more, and at some point you still have to part with them. Next, we cleared a decent layer of branches, leaves and needles, removed some soil, leveled the necessary area, and finished the earthworks by removing a layer of soil near the terrace, thus closing the loop around the house. This means we can move on to the next stage.
We have a small nuance, which is that part of the house is made of flat timber to which we can easily attach the panels. And then it was apparently extended with round timber. And of course you can choose to cut quarter grooves for the board, build the frame and then attach to it. But as we can see, even where there is a lot now, like here or here, it still protrudes more than the flat timber itself. And that's why we decided to choose a simpler scheme, as it is behind the house. And here in the future, it will be used for storing firewood. Therefore, a perfectly flat surface throughout the house is not necessary for us. Here we attach the battens without cutting quarters, but rather adjusting the lattice under the boards. Spacers to carefully align all these round beams in a precise plane. Mizaka. And as a result, we will have a step here. And here we will attach directly to the facade itself.
But before insulating the facade, of course, it's necessary to order the insulation. We go to the website, decide on the material, place the order, and a few days later, we receive the goods. For these purposes, we chose thermal panels. We insulated the roof with similar panels a few episodes ago. We unloaded and got to work. We removed the last protruding parts. Unpacked the panels and started the installation. To be honest, this is the most enjoyable part of the job, as the format is huge and the installation is very quick and simple. I think that's quite obvious. Everything here is extremely simple. We secure the panels using adhesive foam, use it on the joints of the panels. In just half an hour, half of the wall is ready.
And we definitely tape all the joints between the panels and the places where we disrupted it with screws with foil tape.
This is also done quite quickly and simply. As I mentioned, the plan is to turn this old house into a fully fledged modern dwelling. We started insulating for maximum autonomy. After an hour, the first half of the wall is insulated and we move on to the second half. The process here is a bit more complicated. First of all, we ordered the appropriate board. We unloaded and cut it to size. With it, we are constructing a simple framework. As a result, the wall made of round logs turned into a quite suitable flat surface, which we used for further insulation. As a result, another 2 hours and we have the second half insulated. There's a slight difference in level between them, but it's not critical. A little later you'll understand why. On top of the thermal panels, we make a framework from the same board, exactly as shown on the website. The next stage is the next wall. Here, it's exactly the same scheme. First, the framework. But the framework is a bit more complex, as this is the front side of the house. And here, we'll have to work to level it out.
On this side, we'll have something similar to the other side. We are working around these round beams. We screw into the framework, but here, to prevent the thickness from increasing, we will slightly recess them. And to make it even, we stretch 2 strings. One on top, one on the bottom, they are level. And using them as a guide, we will screw our frame. The door is being covered. We won't have it, which is why we actually removed the lock. That's it, screw it in.
In the end, after a couple of hours, the first half of the framework is ready. And it ends like this, at an angle. This is our design idea. Just a little more patience, and you'll be able to appreciate it. Next, we go along the wall. At this stage, we need to prepare all 3 walls, which we will insulate. We will deal with the 4th wall a little later. Since it will be fully glazed, that's where the entrance group will appear. That's why we are covering the old entrance door.
We finished installing the framework for our very heavy wall. We decided to play it safe, screw more frequently, and used golden screws for everything. We really didn't hold back. We set it up like this. We sealed the door, and we tidied it up, made temporary slopes, which will all be covered later. We screwed and foamed everything to level so that our PR boards would fit to something more even, rather than what was here before, and after this we can start. Covering full wall with PR boards.
Then following the same simple scheme, we insulate the house. Foam, board, and screws.
So we have reached, in my opinion, the most difficult side, for many reasons, because we have the gable cladding. This one protrudes from the wall. Then we have a very non-standard joint, which is the fascia board, the end of the building, so to speak it is. We end up with a very thick overlap. Overlap, we can't do anything. We'll probably play it up with metal.
We have nothing to attach to here. If we have embedded parts here, we brought them out when we were sheathing the ceiling on the second floor. But here, it was impossible to implement. We need to extend something, twist some kind of box. Insulate all of these. We are starting the dismantling work. We are removing this strip edge. We might have to remove this entire lathing. We'll see as we go along. And we'll probably do it on the fly. Because we don't have any illustrations or sketches or answers for such non-standard situations in this particular case. We'll improvise.
Yes, improvisation is everything for us. Almost all of our projects involve it. And here we'll solve problems as they arise. First of all, dismantling. We unpack the old gable, refine the window opening, creating something like a portal to which the panels will be attached. Well, then we proceed according to the technique perfected on the previous walls.
Around the perimeter, and we move on to the next stage, the blind area.
First, a sand backfill around the entire perimeter. We also create a slight slope with it, as required by the technology. We backfilled, compacted, and continued meter by meter. The next stage is the insulation, not a random material. It is designed for these purposes. Unpacked, laid it down, and after 15 minutes, the next material. This is plantar geo. It's a membrane that does not decompose in the soil, resists root growth, and reacts seamlessly to temperature fluctuations. Therefore, a blind area with plantar will last more than 60 years. The protrusions of the plantar geomembrane form channels through which melt and rainwater are quickly and efficiently drained. Meanwhile, the liquid is pre-filtered as it passes through thermally bonded geotextile. This prevents the channels from clogging. For everything to work as the manufacturer claims, of course, you need to follow the technology, which we do by sealing the joints with a special sealing tape, plantar band. So let's summarize.
This side is nearing completion, and while we have the chance, let's take a look at how the sandwich itself looks. The PIR board is being installed. It is screwed and glued to the house, possibly onto a counter batten, on which any finishing material of your facade will be attached. In our case, on this side, it will be OSB. We remove the fertile layer. In our case, it's everything that has accumulated here over the years. Then, using sand and gravel, we created the necessary slope, compacted it, then laid insulation 50 mm thick and a profiled membrane for moisture drainage so that the water would run off. And using this kind of strip, it should be attached to the plinth, but since we don't have one, we implemented this node in this way. And here, our OSB fits nicely.
Well, then we level, fill, insulate, and divert water around the entire perimeter in exactly the same way.
We insulated our blind area. In principle, we have already shown and done this on that side. Nevertheless, we will do everything on this side, just a little differently. There, we cut our plant geo in half because the tree roots didn't allow it. Here, we will spread it across the full width and 2 meters from the house to divert moisture. We were committed to ensuring that our floor did not freeze. Therefore, we lowered the insulation layers as much as possible down to the stones, using our 5 centimeter insulation for the foundation. We approached the insulation layers differently. Unfortunately, it was impossible to implement here because there are stones lying directly underneath, and it was not possible to lower the insulation layers further. Approaching it this way is more correct, and because of this, it turned out to be quite high. Now, when you walk by, our head is at the level of the top of the window. We are not continuing here yet, because we will have to make a slightly unconventional solution. but let's take it step by step.
At this stage, these are preliminary landscaping works. In the future, of course, we will make a drainage system around the house. The foundation will be covered with decorative material, stone or wood chips. But for now, we can't proceed with this because we are waiting for documents with the new boundaries of the plot. Yes, we managed to increase it, but the paperwork has been significantly delayed and we are waiting. This is precisely why the nest house project, which you often ask about in the comments, is currently on hold as we simply don't know where we can place it. But there's not much longer to wait, and we were promised to receive all the documents in a month. So the foundation is insulated, the water is diverted, and we are moving on to the most challenging element. It's difficult to reach, so the first thing we do is build some simple scaffolding.
Now we are essentially going to make another additional false wall, slightly to adjust the thickness, in order to properly ensure that the insulated facade is correctly aligned and stable, because our insulated facade is protruding, while this part is recessed. And to even it all out, so that our insulation goes smoothly in one plane, we will add thickness.
Here we used a similar beam, duplicated the structure, and achieved the necessary distance that allowed us to attach the panel's level to the lower ones, such as and finally the raising.
We continue working on the facade, and now we need to install the soffit. But there's a small issue here. We didn't plan in advance how to attach the fascia board. The roof is insulated, I remind you, with perlite boards, 100 millimeters, and we can't attach anything here. The only solution to our problem we came up with is to weld this kind of metal structure, if you can call it that, which will be attached to the protruding beams. From the house, we will also have a surface for attaching the fascia board. But since all our beams are at different heights and have different protrusions, we called a specially trained person, Nikolai, who will help us with all this today.
Yes, it's indeed a challenging task, and we decided to weld. Such brackets are better made on site, as each one ends up being a unique shape and size. In the end, Kolya put aside his work at the workshop and spent a great day outdoors. Meanwhile, the guys were sheathing one of the walls. Eventually, when we got a strong and reliable metal base, we attached longitudinal boards to it. These will serve as the base that we will decorate. Later, the main facade decoration will be attached to the wall, which we sheathe with OSB sheets. According to the plan, this wall will be partially visible, and to make the OSB less noticeable, we paint it black.
Well, an additional protection certainly won't hurt. The weather isn't pleasing us today. We finished the preparatory work for the soffit and fascia sheathing. Just in case, we still secured everything with bolts, and we will start the sheathing. We set up a little table with markings, and will now cut and install.
Here, scraps are used, thermal wood. Our roof is made from exactly the same scraps. After a couple of months, the board will turn gray, and the picture will transform, becoming one with the roof. White plastic windows, of course, do not fit into this design at all. Installing wooden ones is also not an option, because the main color in the design is graphite gray, and on the second floor there is already a window of that color. The simplest and most budget-friendly solution turned out to be a can of primer and 2 cans of paint. Yes, such windows can indeed be painted if you follow the proper technique. First, they were abrasively treated, then a plastic primer was applied, and finally, automotive enamel. In half an hour, the morally outdated windows turned into quite decent modern ones. As a result, the main part of the facade will be clad with wood. As usual, we purchase all the lumber from our own production. I've often mentioned it, but haven't really explained it. And your opinion is very important here, as there are plans to film a large series about the launch of this production. A huge request to write in the comments whether such a format is needed and if you would watch it. In the end, we selected the appropriate material. We loaded it into the vehicle and arrived at the workshop. First of all, we run the boards through the jointer, perfectly leveling one side. Then, starting from the perfectly even side, we level the second one using a marking gauge. And we do this many times, simultaneously ensuring that all the boards are of the same thickness. When we have a batch of material with perfect geometry, we move on to the saw. Here is the next task. We need to cut all the boards at an angle. As a result, during assembly, they will slightly overlap, which you can see on the screen. The fact is, wood is a living material, and the boards will inevitably slightly shrink and change their shape over time. And to ensure that in a couple of years you don't see insulation between them, we use this technique. After that, we brought our future facade to the farm and began the installation. And here it might seem that we mixed up the sequence, as we first attached the boards to the facade and then had to unscrew them again for oil treatment. But there is logic to this. The thing is, you first need to perfectly fit all the boards, making the necessary cuts, recesses and holes, and only then thoroughly treat them with oil from all sides. This way, the wood will be maximally protected. That's why we proceeded in this manner, methodically treating board after board. And we smoothly approached facade triangular window. In one of the previous episodes, we installed a window on the second floor and added this kind of decorative overlay. Now it's time to make a similar overlay on the opposite side. We talked in detail about its production in the previous episode, so just briefly. Based on the size of the window and the window profile, we cut out many elements using a CNC machine. This entire puzzle comes together into an overlay that neatly frames the cheap plastic frame. A week later, the long-awaited installation. It's straightforward here. We degreased the surface and glued the entire structure with automotive sealant. This is a proven compound that fears nothing, and the overlay will hold firmly. And if it doesn't, we'll definitely let you know. The next step is methodically refining the facade around the window. This is not the easiest task, as initially there were no embedded parts or mounting platforms provided. The front board, here, we had to improvise and come up with solutions on the spot, which the team handled excellently. In the end, we covered the front part with the same thermal wood, which will gray and blend with the roof. As for the lower part, we lined it with the same ash wood using screws. I think by now, this type of fastening has also started to catch your eye. Of course, we won't leave it like that. Here's what we came up with. On a laser machine, we cut out these small discs from the exact same material used for the facade. As you can see, this is done quickly and easily. At the moment, we are experimenting. The thing is, the laser always cuts at a slight angle, so these discs have a slightly conical shape, and as you can see, they fit very snugly. We then install the last element of the second floor, something like a windowsill, and dismantle the scaffolding. Well then, it's just a small step left. Following the established procedure, we cover the house facade. I anticipate there will be many questions regarding our wooden discs. As I mentioned, at this stage, it's an experiment. I am confident that they will hold in place on their own. That's why we didn't add any glue or sealant. If over time they do fall out, then we will replace them with glue. Their cost is practically zero, and installation will take no more than an hour. So, the back side of the house. This side is not really visible, there's practically no sun, and rain doesn't reach it either. That's why we didn't overthink it and decided to organize firewood storage there. They will also serve as the main decor. We first cut the OSB to size, attached it to the wall, and gradually stacked the firewood directly from the nearby woodshed.
The next step is to install the drainage system. For this, we need a water level. Now we will mark our fascia board, and we will screw in the brackets and install the gutter itself.
Installation is no more complicated than a calculator. Everything connects and fastens precisely. And now, after an hour, we are testing the system. All works well and the water flows in the right direction. And finally, the finishing touch. I really wanted to create an element that would add individuality and be a bright main accent. Without much thought, we settled on a Belarusian ornament. We hand drew this version, used Photoshop to overlay it on the house, took a look, and liked it. Then it was just a small step away. We transferred it into a suitable format for CNC. We drew it out, considered all the margins and constraints, and sent it to friends for laser cutting. And just a couple of days later, the hand-drawn sketch turns into a huge metal composition. Simply magic. The next step is just to secure this beauty in its place and evaluate the results. First, we attach a metal profile around the perimeter. Later, the sheets will be laid on it, forming one large composition. We will illuminate it from the inside. For this, we are attaching an LED strip. And finally, we add the metal sheet by sheet while simultaneously testing the lighting and various modes.